Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. I am your host, Mike Luke, joined by the esteemed Jason Shear. Hello, Skier.
What's going on, Mike?
And not too much. We've got a lot of conference realignment to talk to. Again, wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that since your tweet went viral. What is it at now, Shear? 1.3 million views?
Yeah, sounds about right. I'm a man of the people, Mike. I'm a man of the people.
Right. Meanwhile, though, even though my tweet with Kenny Dillingham and the Del Taco Cheeseburger is only at 80K, that is the one that the people are asking for. So let's be honest about this.
Well, yeah. I mean, Del Taco rules the world, basically. Or your world, at least.
Yes, my world. All right, now, we're going to get to some realignment. We're going to talk about how this is all going to break down. We're going to talk some Louisville. We're going to talk some Arizona basketball. We're going to talk some Arizona football, recruiting, Brennan recruiting. We're going to talk a little bit of a Marquise Groves Killebrew. Probably really focus on that tomorrow. But first, Shear, here's how this all goes down. Shear puts out a tweet the other day that says that the Big 12 is confident that internally that it's going to be able to get Clemson and Florida State. Then many of the naysayers that were so wrong during Pac-12 realignment said, no, that's poppycock, no way, balderdash, phooey. And then Brett McMurphy comes out and says that the SEC and the Big Ten more or less is not interested in Florida State. Let's unpack that, and then we will get to the next step. Jason Shear, go ahead.
Here we go again, man. Here we go. The beginning of this is very similar to where we were over a year ago or whatever it was, where, it's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. And look, we don't know if it's going to happen, but it's the same people being naysayers and all that, and things that we've said get confirmed 24, 48 hours later. I will say, I don't think this is, we want to be clear here. And obviously we being me and you, like, this isn't moving fast.
Right.
Nothing is imminent. This is, I don't even think this is going to move as fast as the Pac-12 stuff. It's not that type of situation, but yeah, here we are.
All right. Now let's talk Florida State here. Florida State to me is a very interesting domino in all of this. They clearly do not want to be in the ACC. When you file a lawsuit against your conference to more or less get out of it, you generally don't want to be in that conference. A guy made an interesting point too. He said, if you get out of the conference, you win that lawsuit, and the Big Ten and the SEC don't want you, guess what? The ACC, you're probably not going back to the ACC either. This feels very much like the situation where kind of a Utah or an Arizona State, they did not want to go to the Big 12. You're welcome, by the way, ASU fans. But guess what? They ended up in the Big 12, even basically an hour after the Utah AD said that they weren't leaving. So just because what you ideally want doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get that. And Brett McMurphy put that pretty poignantly that the Big Ten, first of all, Florida State's a no-go as far as academics with the Big Ten, and neither one feels like giving them a lifeline because they don't like them very much.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's really what it comes. First of all, with the administrators, believe nothing that anyone says publicly. That's my best advice for realignment. You had the Utah, AD saying, that's BS. You had Colorado's AD denying it when he had already verbally agreed to a deal. Like, it's just not, don't believe any of what the administrators and all that tweet publicly. It's usually not true. FSU, like, they have decisions to make, because if they're trying to get out of the ACC and they're suing them, obviously they want out, or they want freedom to leave. How about that? But you kind of cross a point of no return if you win that lawsuit, in my opinion. Like, if you sue someone for the freedom to leave the conference, you're not going to be like, we're sticking around. Now, the Big 12's problem, or not problem, but the Big 12's strategy, whatever you want to call it, is that they have to make it financially worth it for FSU to look at the Big 12. It can't, in my opinion, it can't just be, oh, the Big 10 and the SEC turned us down. We're forced to join the Big 12. I think the Big 12 knows that it has to make it financially attractive enough. But yeah, I mean, I hear the same things as McMurphy, where basically like the SEC and the Big 10 aren't as enamored with Florida State. And it's another case similar to Utah. Sorry, Utah fans, where the brand isn't as attractive as the fan base thinks it is.
Yes. Now let's talk a little bit. I thought you made a very good point, and when you make those points, we want to highlight them.
Yes.
If you're the SEC now, let's move to that, because the SEC, half of their conferences or half of their teams aren't AAU accredited, so they don't really care about that stuff. But if you're Alabama or you're LSU, whatever the case may be, and you know that you're pushing to get 4 guaranteed spots in the college football playoffs, do you really want to add another team that, I mean, let's be honest, on a good year can beat you, and you don't really like them to begin with? There's really not much of a reason for the SEC to even want, or at least at the top level, to even want Florida State.
Well, it goes back to, what is the next contract going to look like, right? Are you guaranteeing the SEC and the Big 10 a certain amount of playoff spots? If you're telling the SEC, look, we're guaranteeing you 4 playoff spots every 12-team playoff, then the SEC may be like, okay, we're eager to do this. If you're not guaranteeing the SEC or the Big 10 anything, why would they do it? It doesn't make any sense for them to do it. There has to be attractiveness. Eventually, like, money is great, but these schools are making money anyway, so it's not just going to keep being about money. Eventually, there has to be something in it for these schools beyond that.
Do I sound okay?
No, your audio was going out completely on the last question.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Is this better now?
Yes.
Okay. Is it better now?
It is better now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. I do apologize. That's my fault.
Don't let that happen again, please.
We will not let it. We will not let this happen. Now, with so that's where it's kind of at with Florida State. Now, let's talk a little bit about Clemson here. Clemson is also the one that is very fascinating, because I don't care what anybody says, Clemson is kind of in that same boat as Florida State to a lesser extent. Now, Clemson is kind of taking a little bit of a step back, but again, if you're the SEC, are you really looking to add Clemson? Because we've seen at their apex, they're the best team in college football. Do you really want them taking one of those spots?
And who wants to be around Dabo anyway, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what it goes back to, right? Like, if I'm Alabama, I'm confident. I'm confident in my brand and all that. But at the same time, I want, and someone asked Yormark about this, I want guarantees. If I am Greg Byrne at Alabama, I want guarantees. I want you to say, look, if you guys go, like, look, the reason this all started is because FSU didn't get into the playoff or whatever it was, right?
Right.
And if FSU has that record in the SEC, we're not even discussing it. They're probably the 1 seed, right? And so if you're in Alabama or whatever, you're saying, look, I don't want to go 10-2 in the SEC and be left out of the playoff. Like, that's insane to me. So those are probably guarantees that they want, and maybe they get them. I don't know. And if they get them, you know, who knows what the next step is. But I if I'm those schools, I need something more than just a check.
All right, now here's where the private equity comes in, because you make another good point, Sheer. There's many good points you're making this month.
I'm on fire lately.
July is Sheer's month, yes.
Yeah.
But the private equity, I think that's where this also becomes interesting. Nobody knows exactly how this is going to play out, but if there's a way to maximize it, guess who's going to make it work? And that's going to be Brett Yormark. And that you can get, you know, if you can get private investment, if you can get private money in here, you know, that are basically saying, hey, we'll pay for this, that might be a way around it a little bit. So yes, everybody's got that flat 31.6 or whatever the case may be, but depending on if somebody wants to invest in them or not, you might be able to bump that up. And at the end of the day, you got to be able to get a school like Florida State or Clemson probably a little bit more money. That is an interesting avenue that I'm sure he's going to look at. You have to look at it, because again, like, if I'm Arizona, forget Arizona, if I'm Kansas State, and you're saying, okay, I'm bringing an FSU and Clemson, I'm not going down in money. I better go up, and I better go up a nice amount. And then all of a sudden it's like, where is this money going to? But if Brett Yormark says, look, we got $1 billion in private equity. Florida State and Clemson, we might have to pay them a little bit, but it's not coming out of your pockets. Right. It's coming out of my pocket. That's it. Right. Then all of a sudden you want to hear. And so that's why I think private equity comes in, is, again, it has to be financially worth it
for Florida State and Clemson to leave the ACC and go to the Big 12. And if you get $1 billion in private equity and you throw $10 million at each school to make it happen, $10 million extra, why not?
All right. Now, a school that I think makes all the sense in the world for the Big 12, and I think they want to join, at least judging by their fan base, is Louisville. First of all, Louisville, obviously, I know that they've been bad at basketball of late, but you look at them, they make all kinds of sense for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's very much it's a huge basketball entity, obviously. It's one of the top 5 basketball entities in all of college basketball. Even when they stink, they bring in a ton of money. It is a rabid fan base, and it's also pretty darn good football at the end of the day as well. You look at the last 25 years, Louisville football has been good. You produced a lot of guys who have been high, quarterbacks, marquee players, from your Lamar Jacksons to your Bridgewaters. It has been a pretty good entity. And again, it's a fan base. It's a non-AAU school as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. Louisville, to me, is one that I think there would have to be a lot of interest on both sides adding, and I think it would make a lot of sense.
I'll just give you an example with Louisville. I think in April, they launched the separate NIL fund, like the 502 circle, something like that. The first donation was $1 million, and then it was matched by someone else. It took them like an hour to get $2 million for their basketball team. That's the kind of money they're dealing with quickly. Their football, and that's college athletics. Like, you have to be willing to spend money. FSU and Louisville wouldn't even be in the conversation, in the Clemson, whatever school it is, if you're not spending money on athletics. Because
right.
you're if you don't spend money on athletics in this day and age, you're done. You can't win. And so when you look at Louisville, the potential's there because they're willing to spend. There's geographical ties, like Andy Bryant says, with Cincinnati. And the one thing that I've actually been surprised about, Mike, and you texted me about it and we agreed, is their fan base seems like excited by the move, which is weird because FSU and Clemson fans are ready to jump off the bridge, and Louisville fans are like, yeah, this sounds awesome.
This sounds awesome, and I think they would be a very nice natural fit. Now, let's talk about football. And because, again, at the end of the day, Yormark knows that he's got the best basketball conference in the country. And I don't think that's really going anywhere. I think many of these brands are sustainable, and some of these coaches, obviously you wonder about Kelvin Sampson, but 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably going to be pretty good. But you look at Louisville football over the last 25 years. I mean, you finished 23rd, 16th, 7th, 20th, 7th, 13th, 15th, 24, 20. Last year, you're 18. It is a solid, very solid football entity that stands on its own. And I think fits. It's not marquee like Florida State or Clemson, but it would fit right in with what you're trying to do, into that Kansas State level, into that not obviously as good as Utah level, but it's something that you got to take seriously. It would definitely be an advantage.
Yeah, and it's not. Look, Louisville under Petrino was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Brom is a good coach. He's 10-4 record there. I think they'll be pretty solid again this year. They're good enough, right? Are they going to win the national championship in football? Probably not. Are they good enough to make a run every few years? Absolutely. Like, they're not a crap football program. When they're good, they're good. And
right.
And that's what you look at. You got to look at a history of, I'm not adding a dog crap football program, right? It doesn't make financial sense anymore. Louisville's not that. It's an attractive product.
It's an attractive product, and now there's something else that I think is going to happen here that might force the ACC's hand to a certain extent. But you look at this, though; those are the 3 schools, and you would love to add Miami. Let me just add you this. Let me ask you this, because now we're going to go down a different rabbit's hole. If I were to add Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and Louisville, at that point, to me, when it comes to football and basketball, it's game on, man. I mean, it's really game on at that point. I feel very comfortable at the negotiating table at that point.
Yeah, and again, it's probably going to be difficult to beat the SEC and the Big Ten, but you could come close when you add those 4 schools.
But you know what you are, though? You are a completely sustainable model at that point. You are that third conference, and it's not something where people are like, oh, man, in 4 years, this is going away. You are 1,000% that other conference. And John Grove makes a very good point where he says Louisville is one of the biggest media markets without a pro team. Again, that's why I think it fits in really well in the Big 12.
Yeah, I don't hate Louisville. I don't like how I don't really hate any Big 12 teams.
No, I don't. And I don't hate
I'm not big on Miami. I No, I'm not in terms of adding them. Like I would absolutely add Miami, but I don't hate. I mean ASU.
Yeah, I mean ASU stinks, and I don't really like Utah. I don't, because Utah was the epitome of they thought they were too good for the Big 12. So I don't really. Those are the two fan bases, though. I'm not really big on.
You love Colorado's fan base.
Here's with Colorado fans. Once Dion goes away, they'll be back to being nothing. So I mean, they'll be fine. I don't worry about Colorado. Now, I was reading another interesting article here as well that I don't think that people are really maybe giving enough credence to, and that is, if the ACC, if this lawsuit works and these teams are allowed to bounce, the team that becomes very, very intriguing for the Big Ten, and I think it'd be hard for them to turn them down, is Duke, because they fit into that landscape for a variety of different reasons. First of all, you've got great academics there. Not only do you have great academics, you have an elite level basketball program that would run roughshod over that crap conference, even though people think it's good. And if you had a traveling partner of of a North Carolina or something like that, or it's a North Carolina State, whatever the case may be, if Duke leaves the conference, I think then it's almost kind of a domino effect where that thing is just all blowing up.
Yeah, Duke and North Carolina, right? Very attractive brands for the Big Ten and the SEC. You start to think about schools like Virginia too, but
right.
I like Florida State as a brand. I like Clemson as a brand. Duke and North Carolina are hard to pass up. They just are academically and all that. They would probably be higher in that hierarchy than the other two.
I do believe then, and this is an interesting point though that I was reading, I do believe then at that point maybe we're looking at the wrong school here, or because if Florida State and Clemson, if Duke forces their hand by saying, because let's be honest here, if the if Duke is able to get out of this, and by the way, Ron W says, wouldn't the Big 12 be interested in Duke? Well, yeah, the Big 12 would love Duke, but Duke's not going to be interested in the Big 12 for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah.
But maybe we are looking at this a little bit wrong. Maybe if these schools are allowed to go, if you're the Big 10 and you offer Duke and North Carolina a spot, don't you, for your own stability, both those schools have to take that?
Oh, yeah. They would take it in a heartbeat. And then you get in the weeds a little bit, right? Like how connected to those schools is NC State?
Right.
What does Virginia do?
Right.
What does Virginia Tech do? Like then it starts to get messy a little bit. I still believe, I don't know when it's going to happen, but this is all going to wind up with just giant power conferences backed by private equity or something like that. I don't know when. That's just me spitballing. I'm not basing that off anything. It's just like how many rounds of realignment can you have before you wind up at what I think is inevitable?
The other thing too about the ACC, and where I think that you have to be kind of worried if you're an ACC fan, is once you start hearing rumblings though about some of your marquee brands wanting to get out, that usually does not end with those entities staying. Whether that was, let's talk about Oklahoma and Texas for a second. You heard for the longest time wasn't interested in them. Still one of the more interesting mishaps ever. They end up in the Big 12. Then USC and UCLA, obviously, when they were looking around, they decided that they wanted to bolt as well. When teams start looking, you know what it's like? It's like once one guy made a good point. He said, it's like when you decide, or somebody tells you that they're about, it's like, I think I'm going to start cheating on my wife. If that thought is already in your mind that you might cheat on your wife, you're probably going to end up cheating on your wife.
Yeah. And the thing that the schools that I think about are like the Cals, the Stanfords, the SMUs. Like SMU just basically wrote a check and said, put us in your conference. Yes. And you're kind of like, so what happens then? But yeah, like now, and we saw with the Pac-12, right? Like schools started getting paranoid, like, whoa, Colorado's thinking about leaving? Well, what about us? We can't be left behind. Right. And then it became behind closed doors, and eventually publicly, every school was in it for themselves.
Yes.
Everybody, like, we need to position ourselves as best as possible for the future. I guarantee you those discussions right now are going on in the ACC. If you're a Virginia or whatever, saying, okay, if this school leaves, we got to be ready to pounce. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, what does that look like? And then at that point, are you also at the stage where you're like, should we, should we stay? Because if you're asking yourself, should I stay? I'm going to use the marriage analogy again. I've never been married, but I'm going to use this marriage analogy. When couples, and you have a very healthy relationship, but you could tell me if a couple starts having the talk saying, should we stay together? Probably not going to end up staying together.
Yeah, it's very rare. Right. It's very rare. Mike, when I don't know if anyone knows this, when I need marriage advice, you're the first person I call.
And you know what? Let's be honest here. I'm not the only one that people come to for marriage advice ad nauseum. It happens all the time. Now, let's look at some other schools then. We've talked about North Carolina and Duke. With again, I'm just going to keep saying this. They will never end up in the Big 12. One guy made a point too, and I thought it was interesting. He said they would go independent with Notre Dame or something before they end up in the Big 12.
It's the same thing we said with Stanford and Cal. People are like, well, why don't they go to the Big 12? It's just not a cultural fit. It just doesn't. Right. It doesn't make sense for anyone.
Yeah, it's not a cultural fit, and so there's that. Now, say in the Big Ten, not going to add AAU schools, so that pretty much eliminates the ones that we're talking about. That eliminates Louisville, that eliminates Clemson, that eliminates Florida State. So there's basically one life preserver at that point. Now, let me ask you this though: if we're looking here, let's say that these schools are allowed to get out of their ACC contract, which is, if you read the tea leaves, the legal rumblings, a lot of people think that that's a very legitimate possibility that they could get out of these contracts. Isn't it a matter of time before a Duke and a Carolina end up in the Big Ten?
Yeah, matter of time.
Is it?
And we said this with the Pac-12. Once the dam opens, it breaks very fast.
Yes.
Right. Well, once that first thing happens, that makes it open up a little bit. It's just all these schools are pushing through because you have to secure a place for yourself.
If you're able to get those schools, I think then, everybody's talking about how you're going to have these Power 2 conference schools. I think at that point, you also have you also are at the point where the Big 12 isn't going anywhere. Now, and again, it might not necessarily ever be the SEC or the Big 10, but it is there permanently in some fashion. It's just too big at that point. It's got too many brands. They might not get paid quite as much, but it's just too big at that point. It's not going anywhere. The sustainability factor, the viability factor becomes much, much greater.
I mean, from there, the only place to go would be the super conferences because right. You're not breaking up that conference. It's just not happening.
Right. Yes, for sure. Now, one thing that we can't break up, and I think this is something that we probably haven't given a lot of credit to, Shady Rays. We've talked about this a great amount of time. When you go to Shady, here's the deal with Shady Rays, Sheer. Listen, when you go into Big 12 land, you're probably thinking to yourself, you might say that, I don't know, man, it's pretty hot out there. I need some Shady Rays. Check out Shady Rays, my friend. Sure, you know people that have Shady Rays. This is true.
Most people I know have Shady Rays.
Yes, most people. And if you don't, get in the cool club. Check it out, Shady Rays. Our good friend Shane Diefenbach has Shady Rays as well. He calls them Shaney Rays. Oh, that's good.
Hey-o.
Either way, check it out. Shady Rays. This is one of these ones you will thank me later. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Check it out. These will be very, very good in Big 12 land. Shady Rays. Rudy Martinez says that's what they call Ray Anderson. Shady Ray. That is very good. That is very funny. That makes me laugh. Shady Rays. Now, also one other one, Four Peaks. Now, we got a little bit of the history wrong on the Four Peaks yesterday, and that is, I blame Jason Scheer. The original Four Peaks was very straightforward. It was not Christian Coloco, it was Umar Ballo, leader of men, Azulis Tabelis, and then you had Henry Vasar, and you had our guy Dylan Anderson. That was the original Four Peaks, but the beer Four Peaks that everybody likes, check that out as well. Kilt Lifter, my friend. Here's the deal. Visit fourpeaks.com/locator to find all your favorite beers and events. Check out Four Peaks Brew or Four Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest at Arizona's hometown brewery. Must be 21 years or older to drink Four Peaks. Please enjoy responsibly. I saw the Four Peaks van cruising up and down University the other day. I got very, very excited about that, Sheer. I hope to see it again.
Hey, I get excited when I see the Four Peaks truck van going around town.
And by the way, are we going to be able to have 4 peaks this year? So we're going to have Mount Crevis, we're going to have Trey Townsend, we're going to have Tobe Awaka.
No, yeah. Trey Townsend's like 6'6".
Yeah, all right. Well, either way, that's what they got to do. So, all right, now let's get
Mike,
back.
Fix your mic again, Mike.
Is it off again?
It's just really low.
Is it really low? Okay, here, watch this. Is it better now?
Yeah.
I don't get it, man. All right. Well, either way, I don't understand this one. I didn't do anything to it. So, all right, now let's get back to a little bit of, let's talk. All right. What are we going to talk about here? Oh, by the way, ASU fans said Mike is married to his ball cap. I did not wear the hat once at Big 12 Media Day. I blame Saul Bookman for this.
Yeah. I was going to say, not by choice. Not by choice.
I would have 1,000% wanted to wear that hat. I could not wear that hat. I was not happy with that by any means, by any stretch of the imagination. All right, now let's get into a little bit of Arizona, a little bit of Arizona-centric stuff. Now, football, we got to talk. I want to talk a little bit about the safeties here. And a guy made a point that I thought was very interesting on Twitter. He said, "Is this the best group of safeties since 2000?" And I gave it some thought, Sheer. I think it is. When you look at the 3 safeties that Arizona has, all 3 of them are good. You're adding Owen Goss as well. I think Arizona is going into the Big 12 with the best group of safeties in the conference.
What was 2000's safeties or 2020, whatever you said? It was. Who was it?
The only ones I can think about were like ones maybe where you had like Nate Ness and Michael.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I thought you said a specific year. Sorry, but
yeah, 2000. Yeah, I think it's the best group of safeties, honestly.
Yeah, from top to bottom. And what's interesting is Gunnar Maldonado told me at me today that he loves Owen Goss. Like he thinks that dude, he's like the energy is insane. He's really good. He's crazy in the weight room. Like, and it wasn't me like asking specifically. He kind of just said it like on his own.
I think there's going to be a lot of times. Where there's going to be 3-4 safeties on the field. I mean, depending, especially the teams they're going against. And I'm telling you, I think Genesis Smith is going. There's going to be a lot of 3 safety looks where Genesis Smith is much closer to the box, especially if they can't really figure out that other linebacker spot. There's going to be a lot of those spots here.
They're going to play a lot of the dime that we saw in practice, where basically it's kind of like 1 linebacker, which would be Manu, 4 down linemen, and then just defensive backs all over the field. And it makes sense. You want to put your best players on the field. Like, as a coach, if I looked next to me, Genesis Smith isn't on the field, I'm wondering why not.
Right. And you got to be able to put him out there, especially, too, because that's one that Jed Fish was trying to get out of here. Nice try, Jed Fish. Nice try. Now, one thing that with this group, we talked about this before. When you've got the quarterbacks, you got the running backs. I believe that it is the best running back conference in the league or in the country. You agree with this, Sheer?
Yeah, it's hard to. I mean, Brooks, Neal, Harvey. Arizona's room, ASU's room could be surprisingly good.
Giddens,
Edwards.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. And Arizona's room could be really good. So you might need a little bit of a thumper at the line, and I think that's where Genesis Smith comes into play, my friend. That's where I think Genesis Smith. But quarterbacks are obviously very good. One thing, though, the receivers are not probably up to par with some of the other ones in the country. I was looking at that the other day. Sure, you got T-Mac, but that's one where maybe because we keep talking about the cornerback and being a little bit worried about that. Maybe we're stressing a little bit when we don't need to.
Yeah. I mean, I think each team has like a good, very solid wide receiver, but there's not like, you're not in a conference where you're like, oh crap. You know what I mean? Like the Pac-12 was very talented with wide receivers. I'm trying to think like,
who has really good receivers? And I hate to say this.
What?
Colorado. Colorado's got really good receivers.
Yes, Colorado. I mean, what is it? Wester, Shepard, Hunter, Horn. That's a really, really – that offense should be really good. It's the defense that –
the offense should be really good. Let me ask you this, though. Should the offensive line – let's talk about that a little bit, though. The offensive line, what do we think about that offensive line, though? I know you got Jordan Seaton in there, but you've also got a lot of guys that you're like, well – They should be better. Well, yeah, duh, they should be better because last year was absolutely atrocious. But I don't know. I got to see it, Sheer.
I mean, I like Benson. I think Benson is solid. I'm not confident in their center situation. Tyler Brown is decent. They should be better because you can't be worse. But I also wonder, like, when you take 5 new linemen, right, and you just say, here you go, can you perform as one unit, right? Even the NFL doesn't do that. You don't rebuild an entire line in an offseason. You add a player here, a player there. This is literally a completely new offensive line who has never played together before.
Oh, by the way, ASU Sucks says Mike will propose to Malachi Riley at some point this year. Interesting.
Yeah, probably.
I'm going to say this, though. Sheer came away from Big 12 Media Day not nearly as confident on thinking that Montana was going to have a bigger year than Malachi. This is true, Sheer.
I never said that. I just said that your numbers for Malachi were crazy, and I still think that.
700 yards, 7 touchdowns.
No, it was 800 yards and like 9 touchdowns, your original one. Yeah, you had some crazy-ass numbers for Malachi.
Okay, well, you still – all right, so you think that I should back away from those numbers?
I think 700 yards and 5 touchdowns is solid.
All right, well, either way, I expect more out of that. I think you're going to see more out of that as well. Now, I want to let's talk a little bit about the Arizona defensive line. I wanted to get into this a little bit. I'm going to ask you because last year's defensive line got you with kind of attrition. We've talked about this a billion different times. I'm going to throw some stats out there for you, and I'm going to tell you over or under on how this plays just with the defensive line, my friend. Are you ready for this?
Just the line.
Just the line. Just the line.
All right,
okay.
I'm ready.
All right. Over or under 5 sacks for Trey Smith?
Over.
Wow. Okay, because he only had 6.5 last year at San Jose State. So you're saying in a bigger conference, he's going to go even bigger.
Yeah, because I think you're surrounded by better players. He got double teamed like every game last season.
Yeah, but they had a pretty good D line there as well.
Well, they had him and they had the Toya in the middle, but other than that, it was all right.
You can't name the other D end on San Jose State. Come on.
I just gave you Toya. You don't even know who Toya is.
Toya was the 5'11", 280-pound tackle that Arizona was hoping would enter the portal. That guy.
Oh, Michael, their other end was hold on, I'm going to get this.
Oh, as you look it up?
No, I'm not. Look. I don't know who it is.
Yeah. All right, so there you go. All right, so you're going over 5 sacks, though, for Trey Smith.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, now, Ty on the other end here. I am very, very intrigued by Ty because he's not going to come off the field much. Dwayne Akina absolutely loves Ty. They love the energy he brings. 4.5 sacks for Ty.
Man.
He had 2.5 last year.
You'd say over, right?
I agree, dude. I agree. I think here's what I need from them. And I was thinking about this. Here's what I need from both these guys. I don't care how you do it, combine for double-digit sacks. If you combine for double-digit sacks, then I think there's going to be some other stuff that we're going to talk about. But what say you, Sheer?
Yeah, you know who the leader in sacks is going to be in Arizona?
Who
do you think it is? See, we're going to see who's going to lead Arizona in sacks.
Jacob Manu.
Correct.
Dude, yeah, hey, man, you're the one that yeah. Oh, by the way, Dennis Walsh giving Sheer some crap. This is very good. Given that they're coached by an old white guy, I'm surprised Sheer is giving overs. This is true.
Experience.
I so badly, you know what? When Dwayne Akina is made available to the public, I am going to ask something, not as poignant as that, but I'm going to say something like that, though. It's very funny. All right, now let's talk about the defensive tackles. Then here's where it gets fascinating for me. Kevon Darton, he is the wild card in all of this. Keep in mind, 5 sacks last year at Syracuse, rated out as one of the top pass rushing defensive linemen in the conference. Over or under 4.5 sacks?
Under.
All right,
yeah.
So you look for him to take a step back statistically.
No, not necessarily. I just think it's a different situation for him.
Okay, all right. So, but why? They want him to get upfield, though. Dwayne Akina has made a very
I know, because I can't predict everyone on the damn defensive line to get 5 sacks, Mike. Maybe if I were to say Darton over, then I would probably switch Trey Smith to under. Does that make sense?
You know what you're doing, Sheer? You're falling into the trap that I'd never fall into, where every player is going to average 13 points per game.
Yeah.
Someone's going to average.
you're like over under 5. Before you know it, Mike, we're going to be at 60 sacks from the defensive line.
No, all right. Now Here's
Yeah,
the
we
next,
would.
here's the next question. Watch your mouth.
Okay.
Here's the next question.
Right.
From the entire defensive line. Okay. You ready for this? Yeah. Entire defensive line, everybody. Over or under 16 sacks?
What did they have last year? Do you know?
I don't know.
I'm going to look this up real quick. I'm going to cheat. You ready?
Real quick. But I am going to say over 16 sacks. As we get closer, I am far more bullish on this defensive line. I'm a little worried about the ends, but I am far more bullish on this defensive line this year than Sheer. Look at Sheer doing mental math as we speak.
They had like 20 sacks last year.
Yeah. Now, listen, there's not the depth that you had last year for sure. I mean,
what number did you just give me?
I said 16.
Over.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Because, and I'll tell you why. No disrespect to Nansen and any of that, but I think that this defense, from what all accounts, will be more aggressive on the defensive front. So I think it just makes sense.
So it's going to be so much more aggressive that you think Kevon Darton will get less sacks this year than he got last year.
Well, Upshaw had 8.5 last year, right?
That's where it no, I don't see anybody getting 8.5 sacks.
Isaiah Ward had 4. They had a lot of guys who, like Isaiah Ward had 4. Russell Davis had 3.5. I think they were all in the USC game.
No, and the UCLA game. Watch your mouth. Do not diminish.
Geica had 2. They were like, weren't they in the bowl game? Right.
Yeah. Ty had a couple.
Right. So, like,
Tia Savea, Tyler Manoa. Oh, Cioni.
Yeah.
You had
they
a
had
lot.
one. They had 1 each.
Okay, well, yeah, that adds up.
I think that's where it comes in. There's going to be one guy that has like 7, and then a bunch of guys that have like 3.
Okay, so you're going over 16. Now,
yeah, absolutely.
Jacob Manu. Here's what I also am going to say. Jacob Manu had 6 sacks last year. Very, very scrumptious in that entire situation. But Jacob Manu, my friend, over 19 sacks, over or under for Jacob Manu?
19?
Over.
I mean, look, I'm playing NCAA right now. I'm playing college. We're 6 games in. Jacob Manu has 7 sacks and 17 tackles for loss. Why not?
Are we essentially talking about Lawrence Taylor at the middle linebacker position?
I mean, I am unstoppable with Jacob Manu in the 4-2-5.
Oh, by the way, we got to give a big shout out, and we'll get back to this in a second. We got to give a big shout out to Les Fafita. Celebrated his 40th birthday yesterday. Big fan of Les Fafita. We very much like Les Fafita. I do believe he's older than 40, but he looks 40. So again, Les Fafita, happy birthday, my friend. Now, so Jacob Manu, over or under 6.5 sacks?
Over. I think he gets 7.
So if he gets 7, he's going to be in contention for the Defensive Player of the Year in the conference.
Absolutely. He won't get it, but yes.
All right. Yeah, you're like, he won't get it, but he will get it. All right. Now, wanted to switch over to a little bit of Arizona basketball here. We talked about this yesterday, but I think we got to talk about it a little bit more. Keshad Johnson. Watching the highlights, and I was on a Heat blog, which, let's be honest here, that's how we all should spend our time. And they said that the way that he is playing, not only do they think that he is going to get a roster spot with the way that some of the, your Cody Martin has left, some of these guys just leaving. They said not only do they think he's going to get a roster spot, they think he's going to play actual minutes this year. And that is the most Miami Heat thing ever if that happens for Keshad Johnson.
Look, Mike, I don't want to dream of a Jimmy Butler, Pella Larson, Keshad Johnson lineup, but
just do it, man.
I'm dreaming of it. I'm dreaming of it.
But it makes a lot of sense though, because he can guard so many different positions.
Yeah.
Offensively, he's not good. I mean, not good's not the right term, but you can stick him in the corner and he can at least make an open 3. He can catch oops.
He's doing in the NBA what we thought he would do more in college, which is he's been getting it off turnovers and running the court and dunking on everyone in summer league. That's what we thought he would do in college.
Which leads me to my next point. And again, Keshad was very good. Let's not act. That's not what we're saying here. So save your animus for sheer. But watching Keshad though, he's all energy. That's what I thought he was going to be last year, and he wasn't. He was good, but he wasn't all energy.
I thought Keshad was good defensively, but there's a clip the other day in the summer league game where you saw the clip. He guards 5 guys in one possession.
Right.
And does it effectively, and it ends with a big play. And it's like, that was the dude that everyone thought they were getting. And Keshad was good at Arizona. It's not what we're saying. But that defense was like elite, and I'm not sure how many games Keshad was an elite defender.
I thought Keshad was going to be one of the absolute best defensive players in the country. I thought he was going to be an absolute terror. And again, he was good. He was an all-conference type player, but I thought he was going to be like one of the top 5-8 defensive players in the country type good.
I thought Keshad was going to be Rondé. You just put Rondé on the other team's best opposing wing, and they're done. They're out of the game.
You know what it was with Keshad, too? There were way too many games where it felt like he had like 4 points and 3 rebounds. Whereas, with his skill set, he should have been getting, 14 and 9. But either way, better late than never. I do believe, though, that he's going to stick on the Miami Heat, and that is the most Miami Heat selection ever. Keep in mind, these are guys that get undrafted free agents, and they somehow turn out to be good. Now, let me ask you this, Sheer. Who has a better
Pella?
All right, fair enough. All right, you already beat me. You already beat me to that. But very excited though for Keshad though, because like you said,
I am too. Great dude. I mean, he grew up. If you guys don't know Keshad's story with his brother and all that, look it up. It's pretty crazy. So happy for that dude if he gets a contract.
All right, now before we sign off here, I will be on the show tomorrow, but then I'm traveling to Tahoe, so I will be off Friday, but I will be back on Monday, my friends. But now let's Jason Shear, where can they find you doing your work?
WildcatAuthority.com, Wildcat Scoop Podcast with Shelby.
All right, now with you can also follow me at Iron Mike Luke. Also become part of the PHNX Die Hard group. All kinds of good stuff. The great Andy Bryant in there, keeping it. Wishing everybody a happy morning and everything. Andy is the man. It's all kind of good stuff. Plus, you can get merchandise. You can get all kinds of discounts. You can hang out with Shane Diefenbach more. All kinds of good stuff. But on that note, though, we will be back with you tomorrow, though. Everybody on the comments, very much appreciate it. You guys are fantastic. We're signing off. Be back with you tomorrow. Bear down, back the A. Oh, I forgot one thing. One thing. Do not go anywhere. As good a news as it is, and this was in my show notes and I went right over it. As good a news as it is about the Arizona going the way of the Buffalo, we still have work to be done. They are still keeping it on their social media handles. I don't know if you saw this or not. They said they're going to keep it on their social media handles. That still needs to be eradicated like the plague.
I'll take care of this, Michael. You have my word.
They issued that when I was on the news last night. They showed me that, and I said I'm not happy about that. So we will continue to work on that. There's more work that needs to be done, but it was a good start. But on that note, though, for Jason Shear, the great Shane Diefenbach, I am merely Mike Luke. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.